the WHB Radio Orchestra, whose lilting dance music floats out to receptive radio listeners all over the nation. Perry and Russell. If any monologuist of today tried to get away with that once popular hit, "You can't play every instrument in the band," these clever chaps, who are called the Two-Man Singing Orchestra, would have the laugh on him. They not only play all those instruments in the picture, but sing while they're doing it. If you happen to have a grouch when you tune in on them, they'll give you a quick hunch toward cheerfulness. They have been making life joyful for listeners in at station WOR. Rose Brown, leading lady of the KGO Players. That lovely voice of hers prompted a rush request to station KGO for Miss Brown's picture, for we felt sure that anyone with such speaking tones would be good to look upon. A good guess it proved, as all will agree who see the above photograph. Harvey Marburger and his Keith Vaudeville Entertainers. If you have seen the Café L'Aiglon in Philadelphia, you'll know that the exotic setting arranged for this orchestra is quite in keeping with the place where they play. And they can make even jazz sound better than it really is, a statement you can prove for yourself by tuning in WIP. Corley W. Kirby, of station WWJ, Detroit News, who started something when he came out in this department against radio dramatic readers. Lieutenant Lowell Smith, acting commander of the United States Army World Flyers, who recently completed their round-the-world flight. Lieutenant Smith is describing his experiences before the microphone at station WCCO, St. Paul, Minneapolis. WCCO was formerly known as WLAG. At several cities, notably at Boston and New York, when the Flyers arrived, greetings and speeches were broadcast to them in the air, and the answers picked up by the microphones of a broadcasting station on the ground, and rebroadcast to radio listeners. Indirect advertising by radio is regularly achieved by this orchestra, which plays popular and semi-classical numbers from station WEAF, New York. It is the B. Fisher & Company Astor Coffee Orchestra. This company, one of a considerable number now doing indirect advertising on the air, pays a fee of a certain sum per minute for the use of the broadcasting station, as well as the salaries of the orchestra. Radio advertising is a new field, about which very little is known. The radio studio may become as much a battleground for advertisers as the pages of the daily newspaper or the magazine. There are those who contend that all broadcasting is advertising for someone, and that it is merely a question of who shall be advertised and in what way. Secretary of Commerce Hoover says, "The quickest way to kill broadcasting would be to use it for direct advertising. In any event, it will be the listener who decides whether or no he will countenance radio advertising of any sort." The photograph shows the studio of KGO at Oakland. The Happiness Boys give a weekly program from WEAF New York, which is an excellent example of what many consider a quite inoffensive form of indirect advertising. The only mention made of happiness candy stores, which they represent, is at the start and finish of their half-hour program. Wendell Hall, a radio entertainer who is nationally known. He has appeared from many stations in all parts of the country, accomplishing indirect advertising for the National Carbon Company. Jack Dempsey and Major White. The champion is being initiated into the mysteries of radio at his training camp before his fight with Carpentier, which Major White announced, the first fight ever to be broadcast. On the island of Oahu, Hawaii, is the Trans-Pacific Radio Receiving Station of the Radio Corporation of America. The photograph was taken from the dead volcano at Coco Head. 60% of the trans-Pacific message traffic is said to be handled by radio. And in Berlin, street vendors are selling radio apparatus. Using the loop at the top of the wagon, receivers can be demonstrated under actual operating conditions. The natives appear interested. The radio bank, combining a crystal receiver and a small coin bank, all in a space 3.5 inches in diameter. The lower half of the device is a detachable bank, which can be taken to the bank offices for opening. It is distributed by the Harris Trust and Savings Bank of Chicago. Broadcasting the Olympic Games at the Colomba Stadium near Paris. 4 years ago, at the last Olympiad, radio broadcasting had just begun in this country, and there was no broadcasting at all on the continent. Winifred T. Barr. Miss Barr is frequently heard through WEAF. She is the official pianist at this station. Onondaga Indians as they looked when broadcasting a war dance in the studio of WGY, Schenectady. Those who listened in had no difficulty, provided they possessed a fragment of imagination, in visualizing the scene, for the whoops of the dancers and the drum beats were highly realistic, real engine stuff. The Campus Serenaders. The personnel of this dance orchestra is drawn from students of the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute at Troy, New York. Their monthly programs, given through the Institute's broadcasting station, WHAZ, have been heard in every state in the Union, every province of Canada, from Alaska to Panama, from Hawaii to Bermuda, and in New Zealand. According to the director of WHAZ, these players have received more than 10,000 letters of appreciation. A tribute well deserved, as you will agree if you have heard them. Broadcasting the United States Marine Band at the Sylvan Theater in Washington. The announcer of WCAP, the station which broadcasts the concert, is comfortably seated inside the coupe with a microphone at his side. The soft upholstery of the car makes an excellent announcer's booth. John W. Davis, Democratic candidate for president, campaigning by radio. Radio is aiding the people to find out just what each candidate says he stands for. Probably the most notable feature of the 1924 campaign is the use of radio by all three candidates. Henry Morgenthau before a microphone in New York. Public men welcome the opportunity to address and interest the greatly increased audience the radio gives them. Senator Robert M. La Follette, independent progressive nominee for president, rehearsing a speech for Dr. Lee DeForest talking movies. All of the presidential candidates intend to use this device in the 1924 campaign. It should be possible to use this device for radio speeches, such as Senator La Follette gave on Labor Day. Radio in the Grand Canyon of the Colorado. A recent exploring party of the United States Geological Survey brought with them a radio receiver. A 200-foot antenna, secured to one of the walls of the canyon, brought in signals from many broadcasting stations. Station KHJ, Los Angeles, broadcasts them nightly news and weather reports. The world at the edge of a Maine lake. This radio set did yeoman service in breaking the deadly quiet of long summer evenings in a Maine camp. The homemade birch bark loudspeaker horn gives plenty of camping atmosphere. Joseph Neck's Waldorf Astoria Dance Orchestra. Talk about a performance of Hamlet without the melancholy Dane. What about an orchestra sans the instruments? It's up to those who see this picture to guess who's who so far as who plays what is concerned. The only easy guess is the man at the piano, who is Mr. Necht himself. The men look as if playing a joke on us, trying to make us think that one instrument can make an orchestra, although one swallow never made a summer. They are frequently heard through station WJZ, New York. At work and at play, Mr. Powell Crosley tracing the intricacies of a blueprint in the shop office of his plant at Cincinnati. President Coolidge and Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover in the grounds of the White House. President Coolidge is addressing the members of the 3rd Annual Radio Conference. The president described the advancement of radio as one of the most astonishing developments in the history of science. He said radio offers the government one of the greatest problems it has had to face, and that little change would be made in present policies. There would be no monopoly of the air, he declared. Radio coach 6ZZ, attached to the Scottish Express from London on the London and North Eastern Railway. Tests in receiving broadcast and amateur signals were made by members of the Radio Society of Great Britain. Several receivers and a transmitter on a wavelength of 185 meters were used, all operating on the inside antenna shown in the photograph. Signals were copied from 6ZZ 270 miles away. The League of Nations in session at Geneva. The President of the Swiss Federated Republic is presiding over the meeting of the General Assembly. 4 microphones can be distinctly seen on the rostrum, from which the proceedings were sent out for the first time. Radio with the Scranton Times during the World Series games. The insert shows the electric scoreboard, which was operated simultaneously with the radio loudspeakers. When the Navy dirigible Shenandoah flew over Scranton recently, the Times radio station, WQAN, was in communication with the ship for more than 2 hours. WGY on wheels. This small truck is equipped with a low-powered shortwave transmitter which picks up programs from churches and public halls. The main station at WGY picks up these signals, and they are radiated in the regular manner. The small transmitter takes the place of the usual telephone line connection between the outside hall and the broadcasting station. The first Radio World's Fair at Madison Square Garden, New York. A large overflow display filled the 69th Regiment Armory across the street. A wealth of new radio apparatus was shown here, including new loudspeakers, great numbers of sets with radio frequency amplification and reflexing. Russell and Stuart Hobart of Roslindale, Massachusetts, outside of their amateur station 1AAR, from which they recently communicated with amateurs in the Netherlands.